welcome to Jade and Gemma. So we've got two J's in the room. I'll just quickly jump onto the next slide and start to do my bit of spiel before I pass it on to Steve. So I am Caroline, and I'm the full-time graphic design lecturer here at Goldfields. I've been teaching with Goldfields now for about 8 years, and previous to that I was teaching in the UK through visual communication at Staffordshire University. I am a practicing graphic designer as well, and sort of done various jobs over the years, but my passion really is in teaching and teaching graphic design. I started going into the digital world through my first employment as a lecturer in the UK. Previous to that, it was all being paper, and when it said cut and paste, it actually meant cut and paste with scissors and glue. So that's how old I am. So yeah, basically went through my first job. The digital world was sort of just beginning, and Photoshop 2 was purchased for the department, and everyone sort of jumped around and went, I don't want to do it because I can't learn new things. I was working in an environment with fairly sort of mature aged lecturers who were very stuck in their ways. So as the news lecturer, I was pretty much volunteered to go and learn all this new digital stuff. And since then, I've not really looked back. I love all digital art, from very, obviously very structured graphic design right through to more free-flowing digital illustration and painting. And I try and practice my art as regularly as I can whilst working full-time. So yeah, so glad to meet you both. And our enrolments this year are dribbling in a bit slower than normal, yeah, we think we're going to have a good first group coming in for this semester. So welcome to the course, and I'll hand over to Steve.
Hi guys, and thanks Caroline. I just had a message from Nicole. She is having trouble getting in, which does happen sometimes on your first entry into Collaborate. As Caroline and I just found out, it didn't quite go to plan, but we're all in here, which is just wonderful. Yes, really looking forward to this year's course, and a big welcome to you new guys. As you can see, I am the Cert 3 graphic design lecturer. I work on a 0.75 basis, so generally you won't catch me on a Friday. A lot of my skills are in the IT and multimedia area. My background's in audio recording and editing and stuff like that. I've loved photography, did photography when I was in school about 140 years ago, and loved it ever since. As you can see, you have your talk button up the top left there. I quite often use a shortcut for that, which is Control and F2, or I guess on a Mac would be Command F2. That toggles your talk button on and off. And you do have to actually toggle the button, so when you finish talking you have to switch it off, otherwise no one else can speak. Likewise with your video, if you do have a webcam, and unfortunately Caroline and my webcams aren't working at the moment for some reason, so we'll have to address that issue. Underneath that we have the list of participants. As you can see, it's quite a small group this time, with just the 4 of us, and hopefully Nicole will get in very soon.
Yeah, thanks Steve. So yeah, so basically you have the chat area, so below, and then along the top there, above the participants, are some buttons that we use very frequently. So if you can see just above where all the list of participants are, there's the 4 buttons. There's one on the left-hand side, that's your emoticons. So you can see you can do smiley face, laugh out loud, applause, confusion, approval, disapproval, slower or faster. Probably mostly we would use smiley face and applause with those, or laugh out loud. So they're quite useful. The one next to that with the head and the timer next to it, that's if you step out of the room for a little while. It's just courtesy to let us know that you've actually stepped out, and that's fine. We know that things happen whilst, especially in the evening classes, where you may need to just step out, but if you can just let us know, so when you click that button it just shows that you're away, so we're not talking to you and you're not there. The next one along, again, you'll probably use this quite frequently, is the raise hand. So if you have a question or a query, then we ask you to raise your hand. So people often get that raise hand button mixed up with applause. So when we do, people often will come in and do a bit of a show and tell or a presentation in this environment, and if we ask for a round of applause, just try and remember that that is actually under the emoticons, and the raise hand is if you have a question. And the raise hand actually does make a little ping for us, so we can hear that you've people have put their hand up. So and the other one, again, further on the right, the last one there is the yes and the no. We do a lot of polling or question asking in this environment, so it's a good one to, if we're sort of asking a yes-no type question, that you can answer using the tick or the cross or the none, so you don't have an opinion on whatever. Further down where you do your chatting, there is another emoticon button which actually will allow you to put some emoticon into your chat. So if you click where the chat area is, if you click to the right, you can see there's a pull down menu there, and there's quite a few different emoticons in there. So if you have a little look, you can put one in now if you want, whichever you decide. An evil devil goes in there for me, music for Gemma. So yeah, so they're quite useful, and they do get used quite regularly, again, just sort of for expressing emotion. If you look to the whiteboard where the slide is, there are 3 buttons along the top there that you will be able to see. One is a pencil, which is where we're at now, so it means that you can actually draw and edit onto that whiteboard, which we're going to do in a minute. The one next along is application share. Now, we do use that, and that's basically if you wanted to share whatever is on your screen. And that's a really useful one, obviously, if you're struggling with any software or something, or you wanted to do a demo, or we want to do a demo as well, then we use that one. And then the next one is a web tour. So again, they're really useful. If you, sometimes we have students that have found a really good website, and we can put that URL in there, and then people can actually tour through that website whilst we're in the Collaborate environment. So yeah, they're all pretty good. Just a mind that we can see the moderators. Steve and myself are obviously moderators today. We can see all chat, so which is fine, but just be mindful of the fact that we can actually see everybody's chat, even if you're sending a private message to someone, which you can do. So so yeah, basically you can send a message to each other privately, but the moderators can actually see that. So I think that's probably all the areas covered. Just as well, just remember that the mic button is a toggle on and off. It's quite funny when it happens, and it happens to everybody, including Steve and myself, that you'll forget to toggle it off, and you think that you're not on mic anymore, and you might be, doing whatever you're doing, and everyone can hear. So that has caused some hilarity in the past, like munching on your toast or whatever you're doing in the evening, and everyone can actually hear that happening. So just try and remember that the mic button is a toggle on and off. Okay. So this is your chance to actually make some marks on the whiteboard. If you look down the left-hand side, there is a sort of toolbox, if you will, of different tools. And the third one down is a pencil. So you can click on the pencil if you want and mark an X about where you were born. There are others where you can actually enter text on the page, or you can draw a shape or a line, or you can place a screen capture on the page or some clip art. So, you know, they're all useful, and particularly when we're doing group work, which we will be doing a lot of this year, where you might have a whiteboard and you're having to make notes on the whiteboard. So okay, so we've got. I'm not sure who did each mark, but we've got, okay, I think that might be Steve who's waiting. And then who was the yellow mark? So just type in the chat area if that was you. So I might just go and make my mark. Where am I? Here we go. Somewhere there. That was you. So you were born, is that Queensland then, Gemma, that where you were born? I was born in Yorkshire. It's going to be tricky. Not very neat writer today. Woo, there's a big S. There we are, that's a bit scrawly, but there we are, Yorkshire. So basically what you're going to, or what we do cover this year with the Certificate 3, and you may not get through all of this, but this is basically what's covered in the entire course. So we do look at sustainable graphic design and working sustainably in the design arena, and that can look at all sorts of things from purchasing to the way you design, to the questions that you ask your client, to the paper that you choose and the inks that get chosen with the printer that you choose. So there's very many facets to the sustainable graphic design, and it's quite an interesting topic, and certainly something that is obviously very important and you know, very sort of now, I suppose, as far as the considerations that we need to be making as responsible graphic designers. Typography, and that covers all aspects of typography, so that's typesetting, manipulating of type, generating fonts, purchasing fonts. So yeah, so there's again, and we put that first because as the first design-based cluster, because it's often the thing that is very poorly done in graphic design, and it's often the thing that will totally let a design down. So we believe that it's really important for you guys to learn about beautiful typography before you get onto image-based design, because you may have an amazing image, but your typesetting is really off and will ultimately make the whole design look really poor. And with typography, remember something to take with you as you go into that cluster is simple is often the best. Keeping things simple is often the best way forward with type. Then we go on to the business of graphic design, so that's looking at how you would run a business, or and also how you would work within a business, and how you deal with clients, how you can communicate effectively within the graphic design arena. So all those facets, which really give you the really excellent tools for leaving after the Cert 3 and being confident in being able to deal with clients and actually giving the clients what they want. We then cover digital photography and digital art. So again, looking at not only the taking of the image, but also then manipulating and sort of editing the pictures down. So something that many people have already done by the time they get to us is having a little play in Photoshop. If you haven't, that's fine, but if you have, then that will probably be a cluster where you will feel fairly confident and comfortable with, and will be able to really push your creativity and technique in that area. We then look at pre-press skills. Pre-press you may not have heard of, but basically that is all the things that you need to do as a graphic designer to make sure that your designs are going to print correctly. And again, this is one thing that when we go back to printers and we do some industry consultation and we ask them what should we be teaching our students, they will always say teach them pre-press. Make sure that they set their files up correctly so that when they print, they're going to print correctly, because they have a lot of problems, and obviously ultimately that is very costly for the client and can be costly for the designer as well if you haven't set your files up correctly for print. So that's what we teach you in pre-press. We then go on to visual design and communication. So really sort of nailing down about the design principles and elements and also colour. So looking at all facets of design in that area and being able to really understand what makes a design work and what doesn't. So and then being able to do that yourself. Then finally we look at layout and production, which again is sort of a combination of being able to lay out the designs that you've done, so laying out your text, laying out your art, laying out your photography, using the design elements and principles to create beautiful layouts, and then being able to produce them effectively for print as well as in online sort of interactive PDF format. So we don't actually do any web-based work in the Cert 3, but you do some interactive PDF that would be suitable for web as well. So yeah, lots to cover. I think we've talked to you about this in the pre-enrollment interview, but most students take 2 years to complete this qualification. There is a lot in there, but you can get through it quicker. It all depends on how many hours you can actually assign to your studies every week. So, okay, I'm going to hand back to Steve and flip to the next slide, and Steve's going to talk you through Blackboard.
Okay, thanks Caroline. All right, so this is Blackboard as we know it. Probably the first thing you will see when you get into Blackboard is this page here. And this, you guys will be able to see all of these 6 clusters from Design 101 down to layout and production. This is where all of the course content is actually held. So if we click on Design 101, for example, this is all of the material related to the very first cluster that you guys are doing. You'll see an activity checklist. We'll talk about the activities that we do shortly. But to get into the actual cluster content, you would click on the top one. And it seems to be going very slowly. And underneath that, you will see where it says Attached File, Design 101 Part 1. If I click on that, that will open in a new window. Hopefully Blackboard is following the new window that I've opened. And from there you will see basically your course content. If I open up B, for example, we will see, it's going really slowly, a list of the different activities that are involved in the first part of maintaining a safe work environment, like so. For now, I'm going to click back to that original screen that we were on, back into course content. If you wanted to go back to the original screen that you see, you would click on course content. I'm having a real go slow moment on my computer at the moment. Okay, so that is where you would get into each of the individual clusters. Underneath that, you'll see some staff information, which is basically just a little bit about Caroline and myself, as you can see there. and the hours that we're available to catch up with you guys. But I'll let you look at that at your leisure. One thing we do encourage you to do, and this is one of your first pieces of homework, is to check out the Getting Started area. In that there are 3 PDFs that we'd like you to have a look at. So if you just make a note of that we would like you to check them out. There's the one down the bottom is actually all about getting started in the various clusters. Underneath that we have a suggested schedule that we suggest you follow, and that is broken down into full-time and part-time study, so you can check that one out too. Underneath that we have the student profiles, which I don't think we have any in there yet this year, but another initial piece of homework that we give you guys is to put together a bit of a blurb on yourself and send us an image of yourself, and then we will start to put together a gallery of student profiles. Underneath that, the student galleries, there should be some work in there from previous years, as you can see under previous galleries, which is good to look at to see what students have done in the past. Student portfolios are basically portfolios that students put together in the last cluster that Caroline was just telling you about, the layout and production cluster. And yeah, they're all, I think there's some ones from previous years in the archive there if you'd like to check them out. They're in PDF format, so it's probably better off if you save them to your computer and then check them out. We also have a Design of the Week. I was going to say competition. It's not really a competition, but each week Caroline and I will choose one student's work that we think is outstanding for the week, and we'll put a copy of that up in this area. Now, Caroline's been through that. Now, one thing, useful websites will just be some links to some websites that we think are handy. The required client job is something that we ask you guys to do once throughout the year. The client job can be an actual client job where you either get paid or do it just for the love or whatever, but we will explain that in depth in a little bit more detail a bit later, but we do require you to do a client job of some description. Underneath that, you'll see the Collaborate sessions that have been scheduled for you. You just click on to that. Actually, we'll quickly go in there. Because not only will you see the ones that are scheduled, such as the one on Wednesday night, but you'll also see recordings. There aren't any in there yet, obviously, but there will be a recording of this this Collaborate session up there tomorrow. So you've got your scheduled sessions that are coming up, and you've also got recordings of the ones that we've already done. Now, the discussion board. This is a really important part of our course. As you can see, you've got it, once again, you have it broken down into the different clusters that Caroline discussed earlier, from Design 101 down to Layout and Production. And I'm not sure whether you guys can't see the other ones. I can see there. So underneath that, there will be also tutorial suggestions where you guys might like to suggest a piece of software or something a little bit in-depth about something that you might want to know about. So if you'd like to suggest a tutorial of some description, you can post that there. I'll just very quickly open up the Just Chat area so you can see exactly what the Just Chat forum looks like. As you can see, there's been a few posts already this year, and it works the same as any discussion board come forum. You would basically just click on reply, and then you could put your comments in there. But we really encourage you to get into discussion board as often as you possibly can. Okay, the button underneath that is social media. We have quite an active Facebook page, and there's also links to our Twitter and YouTube channels. Towards the end of the year, underneath that is the course survey. Towards the end of the year, we'll get you to fill that one out. Underneath that, we have a compliments and concerns page where, obviously, if you have any compliments, we'd love to see them. But also, if you've got concerns, I mean, ideally contact us first if you have concerns, and we can address those concerns. But under the compliments and concerns page, you'll find the proper processes for looking at those compliments and concerns. Underneath that, we have the problem-solving flow chart, which I think we're going to go into on our next slides anyway. Underneath that, we have Blackboard Help, which can be very handy. Once again, that will open in a new window. And from there, you can, if you're having trouble with Blackboard for some reason, just enter a query into the search area, and hopefully you'll be able to find an answer to your question. And as far as that goes, I'm pretty sure that is Blackboard in a nutshell. I'll just quickly drop back into Collaborate, make sure there's no questions or anything. Caroline, have I missed anything obvious there?
Yeah, that all seemed really good, Steve. So, and just getting in and having a play as well. I think when you guys first log in, because I logged in as a student today, you get a bit of a welcome screen, and it talks you through changing your settings, and as far as the look of Blackboard is concerned, and also adding a picture in for your profile, which I think could be a really good thing to do. So that's quite new to Blackboard this year. We didn't have that last year, so you can add a photograph so that when particularly in this environment, when you've come in via Blackboard, a little photo will come in of you next to your name, and also when you are putting posts in the discussion board, there will be your profile picture there as well, so just your little avatar, and it just again just adds that personal touch to what you're doing in Blackboard, and it just sort of helps build that class community really. So, but as I say, I did log in today as a student, and I saw that that was quite new, and it was going to take that student through you know, a welcome and step by step. So, so yeah, if you have done that already, then go in and do that. If not, then you can use the Blackboard help to go and find out how to actually change your profile and things. So just have a play. You can't really break things, so have a play and really get to know Blackboard and your course.
So we're going to talk about the different types of activities and assessments here. As you saw very briefly in Blackboard, there are a number of activities for each cluster. So basically what you do is you work your way through each of the activities one by one, and once you've finished all of them, there is an activity checklist for every cluster you'll see in the content area. Once you've finished all the activities, you would bundle them up together, and you can either zip them, or we use something called Dropbox, which we'll explain a little bit about later, to send the activities off to your assessment lecturer. You will be assigned an assessment lecturer, either Caroline or myself, and we'll let you know who that is. And once you have finished the activities, with the very first cluster, there's no main assessment. Once you've received feedback, basically, even before you've received the feedback, you can move on to the next cluster. But you will receive feedback from your assessment lecturer, and then you will be given the okay to move on to the next cluster. I'm sorry if that was a bit confusing, but sometimes if it's a few days before myself or Caroline get back to you with the feedback, there's no reason why you can't just move on to that next cluster. And if there's anything else that does need to be fixed up from the original cluster, then we'll let you know. So I'll just move on to the next slide here. And what we have here is basically with some of the main clusters, you also have a list of activities to do, and you basically follow the same path here. You finish your cluster activities, bundle them up, send them to your assessment lecturer, and then you will be sent an assessment brief and a due date for when that assessment is due. Most assessments are between a duration of 3 to 5 weeks. Most of them you're given about a month to finish the actual assessment. Then you complete the assessment brief on or before the due date, and your assessment lecturer will give you some feedback on your assessment, and then you'll be given the okay to move on to the next cluster. Yeah, so basically you do your activities, send them in, your assessment lecturer will then send you the assessment for that cluster. You finish the assessment, receive feedback, and then move on to the next cluster. And I'll move on to the next slide. And okay, so assessments. Now, we're going to talk about holistic and non-holistic units, clusters, but the assessments are basically there to test your knowledge from all the information that you've taken in during from the cluster content and the activities you've done. So basically, the assessment at the end of the cluster is like how we deem you as competent or not, basically. I'm just having a quick read here. Yeah, so basically our assessments are given to you as a client brief, as if you are going to be dealing with a client as a graphic designer, and obviously myself or Caroline will act as your client with this client brief. You are given a deadline to meet, just as you would be in the real world, and we do expect that you hopefully can stick to those deadlines as you would per any other client brief. Let me see. And okay, so if you do have any questions, just raise your hand there. But I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, this is the holistic versus non-holistic clusters. Okay, so the holistic clusters are very much the very first cluster that we do is an holistic cluster. It's basically all about sustainability and occupational health and safety. You will be given a number of activities to complete, but there is no client brief type assessment at the end of it. All the assessment is actually embedded into the rest of the content in the next cluster or two that you do. So that's the holistic clusters. The non-holistic clusters are the ones where you do the activities, and once you've handed the activities, then you are given an assessment brief. And of course a due date to complete that assessment. Do we have any questions at this stage? If not, or actually Caroline, I'll just hand over to you, make sure I haven't forgotten anything about the holistic or assessments or non-holistics.
No, I think you covered that all that, Steve. So yeah, and the reason we sort of go over this at this time is just to make sure that you don't get confused when you get to a non-holistic cluster and think that you've finished when you get to the end of the activities. We have had that in the past where students have sort of done a holistic cluster, done the activities, and because that's finished, they then think that all the clusters run the same way, and they don't. We do have assessments with the non-holistic, so your typography and your digital image, pre-press, visual design, layout and production clusters all have an assessment, and it is important that you follow that you meet the due date, and unless if something has happened, you can apply for an extension. So if your computer blows up or you're sick or something, then obviously you can let us know and certainly apply for an extension. However, if it's the reason we set the due dates is that again, feedback from industry is that students need to be work ready and aware that you don't get like 3 months to create a logo. I mean, in the real world, often you'll only get 2 or 3 days to create a logo, depending on who that logo is for. So we try and sort of meet somewhere in the middle where we're giving you longer because you're learning, but that we're not giving you too long, so that you're getting out of that, being able to meet clients' deadlines promptly, because that is one of the things that industry is letting us know, is that the students have got all the knowledge, but they think that they can have 5 weeks to do a brief when we need it to be turned around within a day. So obviously for Cert 3 we give you longer. When you get onto the higher level qualifications, you're getting less and less time. So so that's the idea, is to sort of speed your creative thinking up so that you can come to solutions effectively within a shorter period of time. Okay, we'll move on. So client job requirements. So Steve did show you the link in Blackboard as to where that is. And it's the new thing is this, well, it came in last year, in the fact that we have to meet employability skills. And so we have to show that you guys can not only work on simulated briefs, but can actually work on a real brief. So now's your time early on in the course to put it out there to your friends and family that, you do need to do a client job. It can be anything. It could be a flyer or a poster, t-shirt design, business card, anything. It can be paid or unpaid, but it can't be for yourself. It can be for your partner, but not for yourself, because obviously we need to see some interaction with the client, and unless you can really split your personality in two, that can be quite difficult to actually show how you have communicated effectively with a client if you're doing that job for yourself. We have had students in the past who've had separate businesses on the side that they've run with no other interaction. We've had to say no in those circumstances, but can certainly be for a boyfriend, mum, dad, whoever. And when you go into that link that Steve showed you in Blackboard, it's clearly, it has a document that you can download that talks you through all the stages of what we expect to see in a client job and all the evidence that you will need to gather. So emails, meeting notes, work in progress, or testimonial from your client, all of that kind of thing needs to be gathered together and handed in as one submission. We've also got some suggestions that if you really can't find a client, where you may be able to find speculative work online. There are quite a few websites out there that offer spec work. A lot of graphic designers are very anti-spec work, and if you're not sure what that term means, it might be a good idea to go and write it down now and then have a little Google later on. But it is a bit of a nasty word in the graphic design industry, but it's great for students to have a go at a real brief. So yeah, if you're really struggling to find your own client, then you can go and have a look at these sites. And again, we have listed a couple on that document. So I'll go through. Okay, so again, Steve showed you the where you find the schedule link in Blackboard. It is a suggested schedule. If you're going quicker, that's great. If you're going a little bit slower, that's okay too. But be mindful that obviously you don't want to go too slow. Certainly this year as well with fee capping, which I think would have been explained to you as to how that works. The more you can get through in a year, then the cheaper it becomes, because your fees get capped, and you can't pay more than $2,500 for the full course in 1 year. However, we don't want to chuff you through too quickly, so you don't actually learn and retain the information. That's obviously paramount. That's why you're doing the course. So, you know, it's a balancing act. But we do believe in the past that because the fee capping thing hasn't really been a part of the issue, that some students have probably gone a little slower than they could have done. Again, just be mindful of have a look at that schedule, print it off if you want, and try and keep online to where you'd like to finish. So if you're sort of hoping to finish within a year, we give you a suggested timeline as to how long each of those clusters should take. If you're sort of thinking 18 months, then you know, you kind of want to be in the middle of where we've put full-time and part-time, because part-time we've put it over 2 years. So, don't be worried about semester 1, semester 2. We will be reminding you guys all the way through this semester that anything you've enrolled on in this semester has to be completed by the end of this semester. But that you can enroll on semester 2 clusters later on in May, or I think it's even the beginning of May, or even April. So if you finished what you think, you know, sort of 2 or 3 clusters by the end of this semester, we can still enroll you. You don't have to wait, is what I'm trying to say. There's no semester break as such. We just go all the way through. So, yeah, if you've got any questions about whether you're on schedule or any help as far as time management is concerned, then just give us a hoy. And yeah, thanks, Steve. So for instance, this is taken directly from that schedule. So students that are working at a full-time rate would be working between 20 and 25 hours a week, and that those two, that's Design 101 Part 1 and 2, shouldn't take any more than 2 weeks. You really don't want to be lingering on that first cluster for very long. It is very dry, is the content. I think the sustainability stuff's quite interesting for myself, but the health and safety one is, yeah, it's dry, but it's got to be done. So again, this is another stumbling block that students have sometimes come across at the beginning of the year. So take our advice and get through that first cluster as quickly as you can. The activities are not meant to be things that take you hours. They're meant to be, you know, 15 minutes, half an hour long, each activity. Some of them may be a little bit longer than that, but mostly they're meant to be just compounding that you've actually learned what you've just read about or watched a video about in the online content. So don't linger on that first cluster. If you've got time this week, I'd get started on it. And we've had students finish that first cluster in less than a week. And then they're straight into cluster 2, which is a lot more exciting. So that would be my recommendation. If you are working at a part-time rate, so that's between 12 and 15 hours a week, then really do not be taking any more than 3 weeks. And that's out there. You know, really, I think that you could get it done a lot quicker than that. Just like anything else, if you procrastinate over the boring stuff, it'll take you way longer to get into the more interesting stuff. So don't procrastinate. Just get on with it and get it done. Bang, bang, bang. It's like pulling a band-aid. Get it done quickly, and you're through it and into the more exciting part of the course. Okay, I'll talk about the tracking. We do use tracking so that we can actually find out if you've been in the course. We've actually got an early warning system that will tell us if you haven't been in for a certain period of time, so that we get warned if you've not actually been into Blackboard, and we can then email you and find out what's been going on. So yeah, so we do have that aspect of the course, as well as lynda.com, and I'm going to talk about Lynda in a little minute, but you do get a license with Lynda, and again that has a tracking facility, so we can see, you know, what you've been watching and how long you were watching it for and things like that. So we don't like to play the big brother, but we obviously, with it being in an online environment, we do need to know that you're on track and that you're actually doing the course and doing the right things within that course. And obviously if you're not, then we'll be finding out, you know, why. It could be that you've lost interest or that you've fallen ill or whatever. So communication is key. You know, if you've emailed us and said, look, I'm actually going away for 2 weeks, I'm not going to be in Blackboard for 2 weeks, then at least we're forewarned as to why you haven't been accessing your course content. So okay, and talking about communication, there we go, and I'll just hand over to Steve to talk about how we communicate.
Okay, I did show you the discussion board in Blackboard. That is I guess that's our major form of communication between each other. The first line of communication, you might say. Other than that, we also use email, and we can also have what we call drop-in sessions, which we'll talk about later, where we can request like a almost one-on-one type collaborate session like this. You will also be sent an SMS any time before we have a collaborate session like this. Sometimes we have industry professionals come in to collaborate and run what we call design for your supper sessions, and that's also a really good way to like keep up with what the graphic design industry is doing. So basically, yeah, we have discussion boards, we have emails, we have SMSs on your phone. We also have a Facebook page and Twitter, and well, also the YouTube content, which is pretty much set. But I'm just looking down here. I think we've actually got a slide on Facebook and Twitter just a little bit later. Yeah, there we go. So if you did search graphic design online, I think you would find it. Just have a quick look. Ooh. Yeah, I've got a real go-slow internet at the moment, but never mind. Facebook. Yeah, it's just facebook.com groups graphic design online. You should find us. And Caroline's already beat me to it, so there you go. I will just go back one slide. Yeah, so basically what we're referring to here is just being nice. Being nice to your fellow students. Basically using the same sort of rules that any forum or online discussion area would have, not putting others down, respecting what other people say, constructive criticism is good, but once again, it has to be constructive without actually putting the other person down. Other than that, obviously, we encourage good language and just, appropriateness, I guess you'd say, in the posts that you put in discussion board. And yes, Twitter is Twitter is go now. I might just get Caroline to talk to you about Twitter, because I'm not a big Twitter user myself.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I just actually put the thing in there, but it's not letting me. There we go. There's the URL for Twitter. So yeah, we did use it a couple of years ago, and then found that it wasn't actually getting used that much within the course. So last year we had a bit of a holiday from Twitter, but then decided to start it again to see how we went. So I will be posting. I think we'll probably go back to what we used to do, in the fact that I looked after Twitter and Steve looked after Facebook. And so I will be posting in there, but mainly what I find is useful is that I follow, as you can see, following 515, and most of those are graphic designers around the world. So you know, I find that they'll post really interesting tweets and often links to quite interesting stuff that's going on in the design world, and it's a really good way of keeping current with the new trends. Obviously, I'm sure you're both aware that graphic design is an ever-changing industry, and sometimes it can be very difficult to keep on top of what's happening. So Twitter is a good way to do that. So yeah, so I'll be posting in Twitter, and what we may do is what we did before was put a widget into Blackboard so that you can actually see the tweets and my retweets, rather than actually having to go into Twitter yourself if you don't have a Twitter account. So yeah, I think that's probably how we'll use Twitter this year. And like Steve said, that it's really important about the building of a classroom environment, and it is about etiquette and the way that we talk to each other, but also about things like attending the collaborate sessions, as many as you can, and being interact within that environment as well. So again, we will be doing a lot of group work this year, so you'll have plenty of opportunity to be able to work and collaborate with your other students on the course. And the other part of that is you know, the things like I said earlier, uploading a profile picture of yourself into Blackboard, making sure you send us a profile image of yourself as well for our separate profile area within Blackboard. So all of those little things within an online environment, I'm sure you're aware, make a big difference, in that you get to see the person rather than you know, just a name, which can be sometimes a little bit hard to interact with. And the other thing that Steve and I really strongly encourage is that we do have end of semester parties in Collaborate as well, and we'll run quizzes and fancy dress parties and things like that, so they can be fun. The last one at the end of last year was Wizard of Oz themed, and believe it or not, Steve did dress up as Dorothy. And we have a webcam, and we can get to see what each other looks like, and that again is all about that classroom environment and feeling that you're a part of a class. And believe me, it really makes your study a lot more richer in its experience if you buy into that class environment, rather than sort of just being isolated and on your own. You're a lot more likely to stay on board and actually complete the course if you get involved in that classroom environment. So, okay, so I'll move on to problem solving. Basically, this is at a certificate 3-level course. There is certainly a way that we expect you to try and solve problems, because it is quite a high level, and there is a level of autonomy that we expect from you guys as Cert 3 students. So if you have a problem, the first thing to do is to try and solve it yourselves. And there's a myriad of information out there. Google is your friend. You will find lots of information, obviously, on Google, and you may be able to solve your problem straight away. But if it's quite course specific and you are struggling to get an answer, then you would go on to the discussion board that Steve's already shown you. Oh, look, there's Steve he's put a pirate. That was another one of our another one of our collaborate parties where Steve got dressed up as a pirate. So he does like to dress up. It's quite fun. So I think you'd be able to see his picture there just next to his name. So yeah, so if you have, go to the discussion board, go to the cluster area that you have the questions. So it might just be a general one, which would go in just chat, or if it's cluster specific, you find the cluster forum and you ask the question. Now you can usually get an answer from myself and Steve the next day or that day, depending on what time of day you put the question on there. Steve and I check the discussion board from Monday to Thursday, and we're on it pretty much all the time. Friday, Steve and I have to work, well, Steve's not in, and I work on administration type duties, so I'm not actually doing any teaching on Friday. So I very rarely will check the discussion board. I might occasionally go in, especially if it's sort of, you know, at the end of the semester when all assessments have to be in and everyone's in a big stress, then I might go in on a Friday, but usually I won't. But what you will find is, I know we've got an illuminate there, but that's all right. I know what you will find is that often other students will answer your question for you, because our discussion board is open to all of the students. The Cert 4s, Cert 3s have access to all of the forums. So you might find that one of the past students from last year who are continuing this year will see your question and will be nice to answer it for you. And likewise, if you know the answer to someone's question, then again, part of that classroom environment, it's really good if you answer the question as well. If you're not getting your answer through the discussion board, then you would request a collaborate session. It used to be called Illuminate. I'm going to get rid of that. It's actually collaborate now. So you ask for a one-on-one collaborate, drop in, and you would we would set up a drop-in session for you. So we might say, okay, we need 24 hours notice usually. So we might say, yep, we can do one tomorrow at 11. Does that suit you? Yep. And then you come in and you can actually speak to us and ask us to demo something. So those particularly are quite good for technical software type questions, but anything is fine. Even if you've got, you know, some work that you really want to ask a question about, if it's going in the right direction, that kind of critique type thing can be fine as well. So yeah, so that's your problem solving. Okay, I'll hand over to Steve to talk about the groups. We've changed this year. We've from where we were last year, but yeah, Steve will take over and let you know.
Okay, thanks Caroline. And just as an aside, if you did want to put a little picture of yourself up, you would right click on your name under the participants window and just go to click on edit profile, and then you can upload a picture or whatever. Okay, this year, actually I think we've got another slide for this one. This year we're basically having two groups, depending on how many enrollments we get in the next, or in the near future, I guess. But basically, as you can see, our primary school and upper school will have different assessment lecturers, but we will actually be running the one collaborate session for both groups, which will be every second Wednesday, basically. And other than that, Caroline handles everyone above the Cert 3, which will include the Cert 4 and the skill set and the diploma when it gets up and running. But don't panic, we will send you an email explaining exactly who your assessment lecturer is. So moving right along. The software, I know we have basically talked about the software in your student interviews. You do have the choice of either going onto the Creative Cloud, the Adobe Creative Cloud, which is a subscription. I think you can get that on special for $179 or about $15 a month, which includes just about every piece of software you could possibly imagine from Adobe, which is actually quite good value. After the first 12 months, no doubt that will go up somewhat. And the alternative to that is to buy the CS6 suite, which is about $350 at the moment. Caroline might have a more precise figure. Once you have your student ID, in fact, you probably need your student card. Just having an actual student card with your photo on it is probably the best way to get hold of that software. Caroline, anything to add about the purchasing of the software?
No, not really. Just obviously the cloud is probably the way to go. We have had students that have sort of deliberated over either cloud or going down the CS6 line. I think if it was me and I was starting out like you guys are, I would go with the cloud because then you get the updates. You know, whereas CS6 is you're going to be stuck with CS6, and they have got some nice little features on the cloud as well. So, which is good. There's quite a lot of little apps that are very useful, and you can link into Behance Network, which again will be really useful, particularly when you finish the course. So yeah. Go if you have got CS6, it's totally fine to do the course with. You can stay with CS6, but perhaps look at going into the cloud before you lose your student ID, because then obviously your student ID, once you've got that, you can actually get the cheaper version. So.
Okay. Oh, Caroline, yes, you put your photo up. I just noticed. And as far as the student card goes, basically what you can do, well, if you live in Esperance, it's probably easy enough to just call into client services. They'll take a photo, send it off to Kalgoorlie, and you'll be sent your student card in the mail. If you don't live in Esperance, what you can do is send us a good passport type headshot. Unlike my pirate one, I don't think they would let that one get through. So send us a good headshot and we'll pass that on to client services to have your student card made. And if it doesn't turn up within a week or two, let us know, because sometimes there can be hold-ups in the system. Okay, lynda.com. Once again, we talked about lynda.com, which is where we source our video tutorials on the software, mainly on the software, but they have tutorials on all sorts of things. By now, you should have received an email from lynda.com saying that you've been subscribed. So how about we put up a tick or a cross, like so, if you have or haven't received something from lynda.com. Yes, and Jay, the tick or the cross is in the participants window, and it's the fourth one across. Yeah, cool. And have you, hang on, we'll just clear those crosses. So we go none, and yep. And have you actually been into lynda.com and had a chance to have a look around and set up your password and everything? Which is a yes by me, and yes all round. Fantastic. Okay. Oh well, we're off to a great start with lynda.com. You will have seen exactly how many different courses they have on there, and yeah, it's quite incredible the amount of stuff they have. There will be lynda.com links throughout your course content. It pays to log on to Lynda before you actually go into the Blackboard link, because I think if you're not logged in, you'll only have access to a very small portion of the course, obviously. Now, I did mention Dropbox earlier. Dropbox is what we use for sharing files. It's a program that you can install on your computer, and once you have it installed, or once you've signed up for Dropbox and install it on your computer, you'll basically be able to right-click on a file, and there'll be a link saying share link to this file, and from there you can basically share a file for any size, because obviously some graphics files get quite large, and you can share your file via that link. In fact, you can actually share whole folders of files using the same method. Whereas obviously email has generally a 10 megabyte limit, and it doesn't take very much for a Photoshop file, for example, to be 20 or 30 megs. So we will explain Dropbox in a little bit more detail, but just be aware that we do use Dropbox, and you will be sent maybe a request to join Dropbox at one stage from Caroline or myself, if you don't already have a Dropbox account. But until then, just go take a note of the URL that Caroline's put in the chat area. Go and have a look. They've got some really good explanations and help areas, so yeah, go and check it out. Okay, Visual Diary. Another thing that we need you to do pretty much straight away is to go and buy yourself a Visual Diary. These are usually an A3, if not A4, blank paged book, available from most newsagents, and basically it is, as it says, a visual diary. You can start collecting pieces of design that you like, pieces of design that you don't like, make little comments under them, maybe put a date in the comment, cut things out of magazines, print things off the web, just generally start building a visual diary for yourself. I might hand over to Caroline, because Caroline has visual diaries dating back to the beginning of time.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I do. I do keep my visual diaries from years ago, and I have them from when I was a student as well. And they're really a really good resource to go back and have a look. Basically, whenever a real graphic designer, and that's what you are going to become, is somebody that is looking all the time and just looking around them and seeing design in everything, whether it's packaging, whether it's typesetting in a book, whether it's business cards or websites or whatever. You should always be looking at the way that things have been put together in the design aspect, and why things are appealing and why they're not. Now, obviously, your design vocabulary at the moment is would be, you know, sort of fairly basic, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong in that. You can see something and it could just be the colour that you liked. But then it's a case of looking a little deeper in as you become more, as you go through the course and you build on your skills and on your way of seeing. You may go, well, actually, yeah, I look back at that and it was the colour, but it was actually because they used that shade of red with that shade of blue and the combination of the colour scheme. So building on that visual diary and keeping them and then going back and having a look. So don't just paste things in and don't with no comment. Can just be a quick comment. I love the use of the drawing with this text, or I thought that this was awful. Why would they use that particular font with this design? Or, you know, just those kind of comments. And it's amazing what you learn from that, and how you become quite obsessed by it, but that's ultimately going to make you a really good designer, is that you are constantly on the lookout for things that have been designed. And let's face it, design is everywhere. Everywhere you look. I'm sure where you're sat at the moment, you can look around the room and you'll be seeing something that somebody has designed at some point. Not product design so much, but we're talking graphic design here. And you can see things that are appealing and things that perhaps haven't worked so well. So that's what your task is now, is to go and buy yourself a visual diary if you haven't already got one, and start to use it. And it's your own resource. If you write a shopping list in there, that's totally fine. It's your book to do whatever you want to do. We never really get to see them, although if you did want to show and share your visual diary with us, that's totally fine. We get to see the odd page as far as an activity is concerned, but the entire book is a resource for you. So use it and enjoy having it as well, and keep them, because they're great to look back on. I know mine that I did 20 odd years ago now is just fantastic to look at what I was thinking and what design was around at that time as well. So the next task is that we would like to have a profile picture sent. So there's three. If you haven't already got your student card, then we will need a headshot as well, and that, like Steve explained, the headshot needs to be there we go. Try to get mine. So this headshot needs to be a pretty boring passport type photo. So if you haven't got your student card, you want us to do it for you, then send us a good quality, boring passport photo. This other part of it is a profile picture, so something like you might put on Facebook or Twitter, or so something that expresses you. You can manipulate them if you want. That's totally fine. So you can see that mine there, I'm a little bit of a Harry Potter freak, and I really do like Bellatrix. So, that's my Facebook profile picture at the moment. So anything like that can be fine. Something that expresses who you are, or if not, just a normal photo is cool too, and a little bit of a blurb. So the blurb can be, who you are, where you're from, what interests you have, just a paragraph or so. It doesn't have to be long, but just so we can get to know a little bit about you, and the other students can get to know about you, and you can get to know about them as well. So yeah, we would like that sent in fairly soon, but you do need to email that to us. There isn't an area in Blackboard where you can put this stuff in. You can change your little profile avatar picture yourself, but actually for the main profile area, for the blurb and the profile picture, you need to email that to us, and we will upload that on your behalf. Okay, yeah, third task, as Steve's already said, go into Blackboard and go and find the online learning guide. So through the Getting Started link, you'll see that there is an online learning guide. So go and have a little squiz through that. It goes through a lot more in detail about how you apply for an extension, what kind of presentation of work we expect, that kind of thing. So as well as where you can get help as a student too. So go and have a look at that. And also the fourth and final task is to go and say hello in the discussion board. So that would happen in the Just Chat area. So go and make a post in there, go in this Just Chat forum and introduce yourself to the other students. Again, it's great that they get to meet you as well as you meeting them. We will also be requiring you to go and watch a recording from last year on group etiquette and group critique, but we're just finalising on that video at the moment, so we'll post out to all of the new students the link on YouTube of the video that we'd like you to go and watch. So just watch out for that. Okay, so just a reminder, if you want to drop in, you need to email either myself and Steve. As I say, Steve, we will email you probably by the end of tomorrow as to who your assessment lecturer is. It's probably going to be me at the moment, but it would be dependent on how many students we get in into this group. So. But yeah, if you do request a drop-in, then you need to email your assessment lecturer with requesting that. Probably not going to need one just yet, but if you do, we're here. That's what we're here for. Final slide. So you will be sent an SMS reminder, and you will find this. You won't be sent the link via email like you was for this particular session. You will have to go into Blackboard, click onto the Collaborate link, and the session will be called 19th of February, I think I'll just call it, make it nice and simple, not confusing. And yeah, so you'll click on the link and enter the room. Now, obviously, you got into this one today, so there shouldn't be any reason now that your Java is updated that you should struggle to get into the session. But a good way to let us know if you are struggling is to go on to our Facebook group. So go and request to join our Facebook group today, and then once you're in the group, then it is a good way of letting us know if you're struggling, because it's an easy way for us to actually go, okay, I can see who's struggling and not being able to get in. So yeah, that's me. I'll hand over to Steve to say goodbye, but goodbye from me, and hopefully see you on Wednesday evening. If you can't make it, and when you sent the SMS reminder, you can put your apologies in through that, but hopefully you both can, and we'll get on with the course as on Wednesday. But if you can do your 4 little bits of homework in the meantime, then that would be good. I'll hand over to Steve.
Okay, thanks Caroline. Thanks guys. Yeah, well, hopefully we'll see you on Wednesday. In the meantime, just get stuck into Blackboard and have a good look around, read all the getting started stuff, get yourself a visual diary, and also your profile blurb and picture. And if you do require a student card, yeah, a passport type photo would be great. Other than that, I'll see you all on Wednesday. Bye-bye.